There is a drawer in your dining room, and you know exactly which one I mean. The heavy one. Inside it, a velvet-lined box with a brass latch, and inside that, the good silverware. The set that comes out at Thanksgiving and almost never in between. It was a wedding gift, or it came down from a grandmother, and for 30 years it has sat in the dark getting a little more tarnished every season. Here is the part worth sitting with. Some of the pieces in that box are honestly worth about $15 each, and there is no point pretending otherwise. But somewhere in the same box, usually in the bottom layer, usually the odd-shaped one nobody can name, there may be a single piece worth more than everything else combined. Tonight, 10 pieces of old silverware, 10 down to 1. Each with something you can check in your own hands tonight. And number 1 is not the fanciest piece on the list. It may be sitting in your kitchen right now. One quick thing first, because it decides everything else. Silverware value has almost nothing to do with how a piece looks. A dark, tarnished, unfashionable fork can be solid silver. A bright, beautifully patterned one can be a thin skin of silver over nickel, worth almost nothing. You cannot see that across a room. It is written in small letters on the back of the handle, right where the handle meets the neck. That flat strip is called the shank. Everything tonight comes back to it. Number 10, the coin silver spoon. Start here, because this is the one that gets scrapped most often. Before American makers settled on sterling, silversmiths from the 1830s through the 1860s worked in coin silver, about 90% pure, often made from melted coins and named for the coin silver standard. These spoons are older than almost anything else in the drawer. But they almost never say sterling because the word was not standard yet. They say a maker's last name, a city, or sometimes just coin, or pure coin, or even dollar. So a family finds a spoon with no sterling stamp, decides it must be plate, and out it goes. Your check. Find the oldest, thinnest spoon in the box, the one with a pointed tip rather than a rounded one, and hold the back of the handle under a lamp. A name and no sterling stamp does not mean plate. Coin silver spoons commonly run $40 to $100 each, and identified early makers go higher. Melted, they bring maybe $20 of metal. Number 9, the gravy ladle. Open the box and count what is in there. Forks, knives, spoons, dozens of them. Those are place pieces made by the million, and the market is flooded with them. The gravy ladle is different. A family bought 12 forks and exactly 1 ladle. Then it got used the hardest, borrowed the most, and lost at church suppers. Very few survived. So in the same pattern, in the same silver, 1 ladle can outprice 6 place forks sitting right beside it, often several times over. Your check. Do not price a set by counting forks. Pull the ladle out first and look at it on its own. Number 8, the pierced serving spoon. The one with slots cut through the bowl for lifting vegetables out of water. It looks damaged to people who do not know what it is. Someone always assumes the holes are a defect. The piercing is the whole point, and it is why the piece is scarce. Cutting those slots by hand took work, so fewer were made, and the thin metal between the slots bent and tore easily. Your check. Hold it up to a window and look at the edges of the slots. On some earlier and hand-finished examples, the openings may be very slightly uneven, and run a fingertip around them for splits in the thin metal, because a torn slot is the damage that actually matters here. Number 7, the plain modern fork. This one hides in the open. If there is a piece in the drawer that looks nothing like Victorian silver, no flowers, no scrolls, just clean curves and a softly hammered surface, slow down before deciding it is nothing. Georg Jensen was a Danish silversmith whose work became one of the most respected names in 20th century silver design, and it does not look ornate at all. It looks modern. To a lot of American eyes, plain, which is exactly why it gets passed over. Jensen pieces carry a premium far above their silver weight, and early patterns reach into the hundreds and beyond per piece. This goes wider than one name. Mid-century modern sterling from many makers sits in the same blind spot. Your check. Photograph the mark and enlarge it on your phone rather than squinting at it. Jensen marks are dense, usually a name in a small dotted oval with a design number and a country mark. Families often keep the ornate Victorian set because it looks valuable and donate the plain modern one because it looks like a 1960s kitchen drawer. The plain one was the money. Number 6. The heavy Tiffany fork. Everyone knows the name. Far fewer check for it because people look at the front of a fork instead of the back. Tiffany made some of the heaviest, most deeply worked sterling flatware in America. Patterns like chrysanthemum and Olympian carry a serious premium over generic sterling of the same weight. Your check, and it costs nothing. Pick up the fork. Then take an ordinary modern one from the everyday drawer and hold one in each hand. The difference in density is immediate. Then look at the pattern from the side rather than from above. Cheap patterns are pressed shallow. Good ones are carved deep enough to throw a real shadow. One warning: that deep pattern is much of what you are paying for, and decades of hard polishing wear the high points flat. Polishing is not maintenance. It removes metal. Number 5. The Francis I serving piece. Heavy sterling crowded with fruit and flowers, almost Baroque, every handle slightly different from the one beside it. Reed and Barton's Francis I is one of the most recognized American patterns ever made, and the serving pieces especially are sought after, which is exactly the problem. Famous patterns get imitated. There are lookalikes in silver plate and even stainless steel with that same crowded fruit motif at a fraction of the cost. Your check. Turn it over and read the shank letter by letter, not at a glance. Sterling means sterling. If it says EPNS or A1 or triple plate or names any plating grade, it is plated no matter how convincing the fruit looks. Then feel the back with a thumb. Genuine deep cast sterling has a dimension and a heft that plated copies rarely match. Ornate does not mean valuable. Ornate plus a sterling mark starts to mean something. Number 4. The sardine fork. Now the strange ones, and this is where the drawer gets interesting. A small flat fork with unusually long narrow tines. It stops people cold because there is no obvious use for it. It comes from an era when a formal table had a dedicated tool for nearly every course, and when those dining habits disappeared, the tools disappeared with them. Almost none were replaced when they broke. That scarcity is why an odd little fork can outprice a common dinner fork in the very same pattern, sometimes by a lot. Your check. Empty the box onto a towel and separate every piece you cannot name into its own row. That row is where to start. In estate lots, it usually gets priced as miscellaneous and sold by the handful. Number 3. The bonbon spoon. Small, shallow, often with a shell-shaped bowl and a short handle. It looks like a child's spoon or a sugar spoon, so it gets treated as a leftover and tossed in with the everyday flatware. It is a serving piece, and like the sardine fork, it belongs to a vanished way of eating. Made in small numbers, kept in even smaller ones. Your check. Look at the bowl shape rather than the size. A shell, a leaf, or a pierced pattern in a very small spoon means a specialty piece, not a teaspoon. And check where the bowl meets the handle, because that thin joint is where these crack. Number 2. The sugar sifter. A spoon with a perforated bowl for dusting powdered sugar. To a modern eye, it reads as a broken strainer, and it is genuinely one of the most misidentified pieces in the drawer. It is also one of the least common survivors because the perforated bowl was fragile and the tool became useless once nobody served sugar that way. Your check. Hold it to the light and look at the holes. On an older piece, they were punched or drilled individually, so they vary slightly in size and spacing. Then look for bending around the rim, which is where the thin metal gives way. And number 1 is the piece almost every kitchen already has. Number 1. The sterling teaspoon hiding in the everyday drawer, not a rare pattern, not a famous maker. The plain teaspoon in the drawer by the stove, mixed in with the stainless, used for coffee every morning for 40 years. Here is why it is number 1. Sets get separated. A grandmother dies, the good set is divided among 3 children, and a few pieces end up in the everyday drawer because they were useful. Then the box gets sold as an incomplete set while the missing pieces sit 10 feet away, going through the dishwasher every night. Sterling and stainless look nearly identical after a few decades of use. Sterling tarnishes to a warm brown gray in the recesses. Stainless does not tarnish at all, it just dulls. Your check tonight, and it is the whole video in one action. Go to the everyday drawer, not the good box. Take out every spoon and turn it over. Read the back of each handle. If the letters say Sterling or 925, or a maker's name with no plating grade attached, that spoon does not belong in that drawer. The most valuable piece in a lot of houses is not in the velvet box. It is in the one next to the sink. Two more things before you go, because they will save you money. Read the whole mark, not the part you were hoping for. German silver, nickel silver, and alpaca contain no silver at all. They are copper and nickel alloys named for how they look. Silver on copper and silver plate are not solid either. For the American pieces discussed today, sterling, 925, and coin are among the most important terms to look for. And keep the box. The wooden chest is usually the first thing thrown out, but the fitted slots were cut for a specific service and a specific count, so every empty slot shows exactly what is missing. Buyers ask whether a set is complete before they ask anything else. The lining is tarnish-resisting cloth, which is why the silver inside darkened instead of corroding. And the maker's name is often printed inside the lid, which is frequently the fastest identification available. One last thing, and it is the only part of this that cannot be undone. Before selling any silver by weight, photograph the back of every handle. 15 minutes. Tarnish can be cleaned. A missing piece can be found. Melted cannot be reversed. So the habit is simple. Before selling, donating, polishing, or scrapping any old silverware, empty the box onto a table, turn every handle over, and read the letters near the neck. Because value does not sit on the front of the handle where the pattern is, it sits on the back in letters most people never read. Then go check the everyday drawer. That is where number 1 is hiding. If this was useful, tap the like button so it reaches somebody else standing in front of their mother's silver chest, wondering what it is. Subscribe for more of the house, one drawer at a time. And leave a comment below. What is in your silver box, and who did it come from? A mother, a grandmother, a wedding you were not even alive for? The story of who owned it is half of what it is worth.